briefing. I'm here with Sergeant Burgos. Sergeant Burgos is my NCOIC, and he's going to take the lead in this class.
All right. All right, go ahead. Next slide. All right, so we're going to go over how sleep works, how sleep problems develop, ways to help prevent that, and ways to improve your sleep. You guys all remember this slide? Have any questions? Stages of sleep, what REM is, etc., etc.?
I have a question. In the ceremony, you said the weight loss and the immunity happens in stage 4.
Yes.
What does that actually mean? Is that your body just working on those things?
Yeah. So stage 4 is the deepest stage of sleep, and that's where your body pretty much repairs itself, just much like how REM, I don't want to say repairs the mind, but goes through how REM for the next day. Does that make sense? Do you have any other questions?
So in regards to, I would say, how is that different from I would say sleep is different from passing out, right?
Yes. As we say before, it's like it's the quality. Like for passing out, usually that's due to whether you're taking medication or alcohol. You know, where you get sedated, so therefore you're not able to get to the lower stages of sleep. You'll stay right about 2 to 3. That makes sense. So your quality of sleep is not as good.
Different brain structures involved in sleep versus sedation.
The sleep, the fitness trackers that are out there on the market that kind of track some of this, are they even close to accurate? Have you seen any studies? I mean, can you kind of rely upon the stuff you're seeing on your phone that says you have about getting that much REM, that much deep sleep?
It's rough. So I've not seen research specifically on them, but I've seen like my clients bring in different ones, and some of them look pretty good because I never take the fitness tracker. I always have them do a diary, and your sleep medicine clinics do the same thing. If they put an ActiWatch on you, they'll still do a diary. Some of them seem pretty good. I'm always cautious about the ones that they put on the bed that measure the movement on the bed, as opposed to the trackers that are wearable. I prefer the latter.
Thank you.
Sorry.
If somebody's considered like a light sleeper, are they hitting all 4 stages?
I would say yeah. It's just some
Like woke
people
up like
are more.
anything. Like woke up like anything. Are they actually in stage 4 or 3?
Some
or are they
people-
staying in 1 or 2?
I'll say some people are more aware, but like you'd have to be careful as well because usually in these stages you are easily woken up, and you just have to do things to help make sure that you stay asleep. Like some people would put a fan in the room just so that there is that noise that drowns out outside noises. Does that make sense? So you don't get that sharp noise to wake you up.
There's some heredity factors to it. Some folks really are light sleepers, and some people are what we call rapid cyclers. These stages are about 90 minutes long. Some people cycle faster, and so they get to their shallower sleep just a little bit faster, and so they're more attuned to the environmental disturbances. Likely, if the person is not getting enough stage 4, they're always falling asleep. So for example, someone with apnea. Apnea directly affects stage 4. And all day long, they're like, how can you be tired? You're sleeping constantly. It's because they're not getting enough. So if someone is alerting a lot during the night, but they're not falling asleep a lot during the day, then what I'm thinking is happening is that they're rapid cycling, they're getting all their stage 4, but they're coming to these a lot and being more aware of any little thing and not getting good continuity. So they're still tired, but they're not falling asleep the same way as if they're not getting enough stage 4. I'm hoping that makes sense because I'm talking about a bunch of different things.
Mm-hmm. It's like that whole part of
So I remember this morning you explained the chart, but it still was kind of confusing as far as the stages and where REM is. So it sounds, I think now when you explain it again, it sounds like they're about 90 minutes long, so you hit REM at different levels of your sleep throughout the night. So that was kind of hazy to me.
Okay, no, thank you for that. Yeah, each cycle is about 90 minutes. Some people go 60 minutes, and then rapid cyclers, they go faster, and they're a little bit more unpredictable. You always come into REM, but you spend more time in REM in the latter half of the night.
Any other questions? Did I answer your question?
I think so, yes, thank you.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions about this? About the S is pretty much the start to sleep debt. The C is circadian rhythm. That's your body's internal temperature. So just to remind you, circadian rhythm, heat versus cold. Heat is the enemy of sleep. So when you go to bed, you want your internal temperature to be cooler, so you stay asleep. Just like, is the nadir on here as well? All right, so the nadir is the lowest point where you, this sets time for your circadian rhythm. And for your sleep debt, it can be affected by light exposure, etc. Do I need to go more in depth about any of this?
In terms of light exposure, I would say less light the better at night, followed by more.
Exactly.
More in the morning when you're expecting to wake up. Be it, so those lamps that they put in the clocks now or something of that nature that, let's say, kind of help you wake up. Do those have any value whatsoever, or is that the wrong type of light? Are you expecting sunlight versus manufactured?
Well, any light could help, but really, there's some lights that are made specifically for that because normal lights are what you said.
About
700?
or 750 bucks.
While the sun was 75,000 or something like that.
7,500 to 10,000.
So any light can help. What it is about 2 hours prior to going to bed, you want to expose yourself to darkness. You know, so you'll get the melatonin creating, and then you'll naturally get tired and want to go to sleep. Now, when you wake up, you want to get that light exposure because your body will be like, oh, it's time to be up. It's sunlight, just like in the days before we had technology, all that stuff, hunter-gatherers, whatnot. We didn't have lights. We had the sun, and we had the moon, dark, and that's just how their body regulated. Does that make sense?
But so those light alarms, they're helpful. They tend to help. Your body is naturally going to be coldest 2 hours before you wake up and start warming up. So you're in those shallow REM sleeps. You're also warming up, which is making you more alert. So adding that light in tends to help. You're more aware of it, kind of like what we were talking about in terms of awareness of the environment.
The light exposure, though, I think you specifically said retina, though, right? It can't be the light shining on your face and your eyes are closed and your.
Right.
It needs to be.
So it doesn't have to be directly. You don't have to necessarily be looking at it. I guess I'm just saying retina as far as exposure. You want as much light as possible because the light travels through your retina to your brain and all that sort of thing.
Not dermal.
But yeah, not dermal. And then, of course, if your eyes are closed, you're not getting the same, but you're starting to become alert, you're starting to become more aware, it will wake you up. So.
I have a question more on the body temperature. If you're taking your shower before you go to bed, and you take like a really hot shower, is that going to warm you up and thus affect your sleep versus a cold shower?
You know, actually, sometimes we recommend taking a hot shower because it's like a running start.
Yeah, 'cause you feel more
artificially
relaxed.
elevate, but then you cool down really fast. So it's like a jump into it.
Okay,
so
so
a
it, like,
warm
makes a
shower can
cliff?
be helpful.
Okay.
Any other questions?
So, just out of curiosity, so obviously the circadian rhythm is what we do our whole lives with sleeping for, 7 to 10 hours. But is there any like scientific evidence for like weird, non-conventional sleep patterns? Like I think there's one where you go to sleep for 5 hours and you're awake for 5 hours, and you repeat that cycle, and if you do it over and over, it just does. Like you get used to it, it's like better or something. Is there just any sort of evidence that you've seen of that?
Not very good evidence.
Okay.
So what you're pointing to is what we call sleepwalking. We're going to talk about it a little bit. It can be helpful for shift workers that are trying to maintain their circadian rhythm on a certain way while being active at a different time so that they can then revert. But for a lifelong kind of rapid cycling, your circadian rhythm doesn't move that fast. It's only an hour a day unless you're using those high intensity lights that we talk about to push it a little bit faster. So it's not likely to be a sustainable long-term thing. We just don't have good science behind it.
Okay. So, do you guys have any questions? Because this was on the
So this is how sleep problems develop by staying up late and having
Oh.
inconsistent schedules.
Okay, so this is what tends to happen. This is, the S is your sleep debt, right? So what tends to happen during the weekends, we want to stay up late, sleep in longer. So what does that do? That shifts your sleep debt, which during the week, you have to try to go back, but circadian rhythm only goes back, only moves an hour at a time. So that's the nadir where your body's wanting to go to sleep, and that's pretty much.
So again, just remember the circadian cycle is 25 hours, the sleep-wake cycle is 24. And so where sleep problems start to develop is, we want to do things on the weekend. We want to stay up, and it's okay, we'll sleep in the next day on Saturday. Well, your nadir, it always naturally wants to do that. So it says, yes, I get to slip, just like I want to. So it slips over an hour. So you're not tired until an hour later the next night. Not a problem, we sleep in Sunday, sleep in another hour, nadir's happy, it's sliding over, but then Monday comes, and you're trying to pop your S back to where it was, but your nadir has moved. And so it starts to dysregulate your system and give you trouble falling back to sleep during your work day. So it's not a good idea to vary your schedule during your off days.
Questions? Yes.
Yes.
Behind the post.
So when we fight the natural rhythm of waking up before the sun and not having that wake us up, and we don't have the lamps, that's actually just like messing with our sleep.
Well, any light, you don't have to have special lamps. It's just the light exposure.
Right. When we don't have the right amount of light exposure, whether it's sun or another source, and we don't have enough of it, it's going to mess with our sleep pattern.
It tends to be fighting your biology. So what you're saying is, if we're waking up at 6 in the morning, this morning it was still dark, but I have to wake up at 6. Then we start really leaning on that circadian heating process, so you need to have a lot of light. You won't be able to get the same intensity of light, but if you're waking up at the same time and getting sunlight, moving around, getting a meal, all the other things that turn your metabolism on, that will help pop it back in place.
Can I get that in writing for a doctor's note?
I will.
And remember that is the biggest thing, is waking up at the same time. That'll have the biggest effect. And I think there was another question.
Would you suggest, instead of sleeping in, simply attempting to fix your sleep debt the next night, go to bed earlier,
Well,
and then wake up at the same time the next day if you did stay up late, or you are off of that nominal cycle, instead of the sleeping in, which is going to move your nadir, would you suggest, I would say, accruing a sleep debt and then going to bed earlier the next night?
just remember that your nadir is only going to move, your circadian rhythm nadir is only going to move an hour a day. So if you do that, and that'll work. So say you stay up late for Saturday night, but Sunday you want to correct that. So you go to bed an hour earlier and then move that nadir back. That's totally fine.
Okay.
Yeah, so if I'm working with an insomniac 21-year-old and they're like, Doc, I'm still gonna party on Friday night, it's gonna happen. I say, okay, do what you do, but you still wake up at 6. If you only got 4 hours of sleep last night, you still wake up at 6. You're gonna be tired earlier Saturday night, go to bed earlier Saturday night. Just exactly what you're saying, yes.
How do naps affect that during the day?
Well, naps are okay during the day. We tend to say do not. It messes with your sleep debt. When we think about it, if you take a nap, only 30 minutes and not too close to bedtime, otherwise you're not going to want to sleep as long, or you're not going to be as tired, and that will just mess up the whole cycle. Does that make sense?
Think of it like a snack before dinner. If it's too big and if it's too close to dinner, you're not hungry when you should be. Same thing with a nap. If it's too long or too close to when you fall asleep, it just pushes it over. So if you have to nap, so if I'm working with someone in insomnia, I say don't nap, because I want to consolidate all your sleep in the sleep window. But if you have to nap for safety reasons, or you just have to, try to do it early, try to do no more than 30 minutes. That'll get you enough of the sleep cycle that you get refreshed without taking too big of a bite out of your S.
Look like you had.
I had one more question. In regards to the sleep debt, I've heard something about you need to give back half. If you have a standing sleep debt, you have to repay half of it to get back to normal. Is that true or just focus?
Pretty hard for us to make up sleep debt. We try. we usually aren't very good. The best research I saw was after, say, a deployment, when they come back to those transitional centers. They usually benefit from 3 days of free sleep where they just sleep all they want to, but after 3 days it's done. On a regular day cycle where it's back and forth, you're really not going to make up any kind of sleep debt. So the best thing to do is just regulate your wake time.
Next slide. All right, so this is kind of how sleep problems start. What do you guys do prior to bed? Watch TV, read. Most people on their phones, right? Maybe even though you're not even noticing it, you're on your phone. It's like, just wait until I'm tired. And what that does, it changes your body's conditioning. So when you go to bed, you think of, it changes your body's conditioning. So when you go to bed, your body thinks, hey, bed is for to play games, to watch movies, or if you're thinking about what you should have done during the day. Okay, so this is a start of how sleep problems happen. So when you go to bed, you don't want to go to sleep. Your body doesn't get tired. That makes sense?
So you might be on the couch and you might be doing the head bob, and someone says, okay, or maybe you even fall asleep on the couch and your spouse says, okay, go to bed. And you get in bed and wide awake, and it's like, what the heck? Why? I'm tired. I'm obviously tired. That's usually a sign that your body has learned that bed is where I do other things. And so even though you're tired, your body says, oh, it's time to rev up. I'm in this environment. You've heard of Pavlov's dog? Who can tell me about Pavlov's dog? Yeah. So there's no reason why a dog should salivate to a bell, but because the dog learned that bell and food and I eat, it started to associate reactions to things that didn't ordinarily generate that experience. The bed is the same way too. If you're laying there, even if you're not reading or watching TV, if you're just kind of tossing and turning and thinking and getting frustrated, your body will learn, hey, I'm in the place where I do all these things. So I'm gonna wake up. I'm gonna do this.
Right. Next slide. All right. So this is where you get to I would say the three foundations: sleep ability, sleep opportunity, and sleep need. So your body, everyone's different, but you all need a certain amount of time to sleep. Whether it be 6 hours, whether it be 8 hours. The sleep ability is how much sleep you actually get, while the sleep opportunity is how much sleep you allow yourself. You want to go to the next slide real quick? So think about this. That's when we start doing the sleep math. How many people have done this? All right, man, Sunday, I want to make sure I'm rested for Monday, so I need 8 hours of sleep. That's the goal. That's what everyone says. 8 hours is the prime time to sleep, or amount to sleep. And I usually take an hour to fall asleep. But I have to wake up at 06, right? So 06 minus 9, that's 2100. That's the time I should go to bed. But what really happens, you're not sleepy, but you're in bed at 2100, like you had planned. You fall asleep around 2300. What do you do between that time, right? On Facebook, doing something else. You wake up at 0430, you check the clock, you try to go back to sleep. And you doze off at around 5:30 until 6. So technically, you only got 6 hours of sleep. You can go back one slide. So that's where you gave your body the opportunity to sleep for 9 hours, right? But you were only able to sleep for 6 hours. Sleep need, now that's kind of hard to determine because it's different for everybody. But so usually when it comes to getting continuity of sleep and better sleep, it starts with these two, the sleep ability and sleep opportunity. You want to make those match. And once those match, that's when you start finding out how much sleep you actually need. Depending on the day, if you don't get enough REM sleep, your mood changes, you're not going to be happy, etc. If you don't get enough deep sleep, then you have body problems or health problems. You can go next 2 slides. So here's some sleep hygiene principles. You want to avoid caffeine 4 to 6 hours before bedtime. That's usually how long the half-life of caffeine. And it's, how do you say it? It stacks. So if you two cups of coffee should be good enough to get you through the day. But some people, they drink more, and that's due to tolerance. Thank you. And that's due to tolerance. You want to avoid nicotine an hour before bedtime. Same deal. Avoid alcohol before bedtime, and 1 hour. And it takes 1 hour to get alcohol out of your system. Usually, this is about the time where someone's going to be smirking, like, well, alcohol does help me sleep. It's a sedative, but like we talked earlier, you're not getting that quality sleep. So you might be sleeping long, but you're not getting to those lower stages of sleep that you need. Does that make sense? You want to avoid vigorous exercise within 2 hours of bedtime. Avoid daytime napping. Now, we had already gone over this with the sleep debt. Bedroom environment, moderate temperature, quiet, dark. We talked about those things as well. And then a light snack at bedtime may actually help you sleep. Have you guys turkey, anything really?
Turkey fan. Yeah. So there's good evidence for turkey, small bits of cheese, and actually tart cherry juice. I've seen it in commissaries, and I've always wondered, what is this tart cherry juice until I started working in this domain. It can be helpful because it has the precursors to tryptophan.
Now, some of you guys might be thinking, oh man, I've done all this stuff, and it doesn't work. Some people do it for 2 or 3 days, and you're right. This isn't everything. What's really going to help is the light exposure, there's moving the nadir, circadian rhythm, getting that consistency. This can help with that. And if you do these, they're not going to help you get better. Does that make sense? So it's not the foundation, but it does help.
So I usually ask in my insomnia classes, I'm like, who's done all these things before? And people say yes. Did it work? No. That's because these are necessary but insufficient. The things that we're going to do, that we're going to talk about in a minute, stimulus control, sleep compression, those are the actual active treatments for sleep problems. But if we don't have these things on a solid foundation, what we build on top just isn't going to work. They're countermanded. These things affect your stage 4. These things affect your sleep architecture. And so if you are falling asleep because you've got alcohol, but your liver's humming to filter out all that ethanol, you've basically warmed up your body. You're getting poor quality of sleep. It doesn't matter what we do with anything else. So these are necessary but insufficient programs. We need them in place, but you need something else too. Make sense?
Yes.
I'm gonna foot stomp this one.
Yeah.
So, foundation. I said this about 5 million times. I'm gonna say it one more time. If you take nothing else from anything that we said today, wake up at the same time every single day. Most people look at me and say, no. Because sleep-in is my, Saturday morning sleep-in. That's what I live for. That's what I've been waiting for all week. How could you take that away from me, Dr. Nicholas? And I say, I get it. I understand it. But I don't know where your nadir is. And it takes an hour a day for it to move. So it takes maybe 24, 25 days for me to lock it in place. So give me a month. Just a month. It's not a life sentence. I don't want you waking up at 05 on Saturday forever, but I want you for a period of time to be waking up at the same time so I know it's in place. And then once it's in place and you're sleeping well, you might find that for 7 days a week you feel pretty good instead of 2 days a week. You'll find that you're starting to wake up to your alarm, or maybe even slightly before, and you're feeling okay. And if you want to sleep in, if you want to stay up late one night and sleep in the next night, you know exactly what to do. You've got it. You can fix it yourself. But until I've regulated your nadir, I need you to be consistent. Make sense? More tolerable? Okay.
All right, stimulus control. Set a reasonable bedtime and a rising time, and stick to them. As Colonel Nicholas was saying, it's the wake-up time. That's what we want to foot stomp, or make sure you guys really remember. If you get anything out of this class, it's that. Wake up at the same time. That's what's really going to help you out. Go to bed only when you are sleepy. So as we talked about, if you lay in bed and you're tossing and turning 10 to 15 minutes, you want to get back up, do something that will promote you to sleep, like maybe reading a book, a light novel. That usually helps some people. Some people think books are riveting, so don't do that. do something, but stay in darkness, things to promote sleep. We're not asking you to watch your clock and be like, it's been 10 minutes, I guess I'll get up. No, because that's definitely going to keep you up. If you toss and turn about 3 times, that's about 10 minutes. So just get up and do what you can. Get out of bed if you, we just talked about that. And repeat if necessary. I know you're probably thinking, well, then I'm not going to get enough sleep. You'll fix it. It will fix itself. So you'll get tired and you'll start sleeping earlier and earlier. Does that make sense? To condition yourself. Use the bedroom for sleep and sex only. Now, Coach Nicholas has the hardest time telling people not to have their TV in their room because that promotes you wanting to watch TV, or people always say, oh, the noise, it helps you go to sleep. But what it is with TV, it's unpredictable. You'll have spikes in volume, and that'll wake you up because your body responds to that. So what we ask, at least, is to have a sleep timer. Get a TV with a sleep timer, so it'll help you go to sleep, and then it'll shut off. And you don't need it anymore. Fan does help too with the noise, like we had talked about before. Did you want to talk about some of your studies or anything like that? Never mind. So,
I'm not sure which one.
So we say do not nap during the day. Hint on that again as far as your sleep debt. If you know how to do it earlier on. Do it for 30 minutes. Okay. You don't want to snack before dinner. Allow yourself at least an hour before bedtime to unwind. Get into a routine. Find out what works for you. 2 hours of darkness, etc., etc. Whether it is to shower, take a hot shower before bed, so your body, gets that momentum to go to sleep. Do what you need to do.
So some things that always come up for this is couples. And so, couples go to bed at the same time together because they love each other, and one of them falls right to sleep and the other one is hating on him because they're awake. Often what I say is, in addition to insomnia, it might not be insomnia. Your partner might need 8 hours, you might need 6. And so only go to bed when you're sleeping. Again, the wake-up time is always the same, but only go to bed when you're sleeping. And so if that means spouse falls asleep a little bit before you, be out of the room doing whatever it is, and then when you're sleeping and doing the head bob thing, then you pop back into the bedroom and go to bed. The other thing, when folks get up and they're tossing and turning, I always tell them, because they never do. They're always like, well, I just laid there. I'm like, well, sleep's going to creep through the window, and you weren't there, so you don't get me today. It doesn't work like that. Get out of bed, go somewhere in dim light, and do something boring. I don't know why people always want to clean. Don't clean, because that warms you up and heats the enemy of sleep. Do something boring, do something until you get the head bob. Do not fall asleep where you were. So if you are on the couch doing something boring, don't fall asleep there. Go back to your bed, because otherwise you'll start learning that couch is where I sleep and bed is where I'm awake, and it's all messed up. So go back to bed. Yes, you're up and down several times a night. Yes, that night is going to be pretty terrible and you're going to be sleepy the next day, but I'm breaking that conditioning so that for the long term, your body knows to relax. Any questions? This is it graphically. I really like emojis. I like the cat in the hat.
So, sleep compression. How many people have ever made a homemade pizza? Or anything of the sort? Oh, wow, a lot more people in this class. Okay, so say you have enough dough for a 6-inch pizza, 6-inch pan. But you got a 10-inch pan and you try to spread it. What happens? It breaks, it tears. That's the same thing when we talk about your sleepability and the need. So we say, get all of your get all of your sleep. I would start like 6, or if you're sleeping and you're not waking up, like actually getting up, not just waking up, turning over, falling back to sleep. We don't really count that. But if you're waking up, going to the bathroom, and you're wide awake, you're thinking about things, That's a break in sleep. That's what we talk about as far as a rip in the dough. Okay, so you wanna gather all that and say if you sleep 6 hours without interruption, start with that, and then you can spread it 30 minutes every day. Well, a week, 30 minutes a week.
Right. So just like a pizza, if it breaks, you can't just lop it over on itself because when you cook it, it's going to break again. So you got to ball it back up and then gradually stretch it and see how far it goes. We're going to do the same thing with sleep. Back to our sleep math. This person was getting 6 hours of sleep, but they were putting it in a 9-hour pan. Not good. You're getting that breakage. So what we want to do is ball it up to 6 hours. Wake time is always the same. Said them a million times. So they're getting 6 hours. They have to wake up at 6. Subtract 6 hours. Bedtime's midnight, not 9. It seems counterintuitive because here to be low. It's my tax dollars too. And so I want to preserve your health. So we really want to do some things with shift work, and part of it is just trying to find a way to use what we know about the circadian rhythm to the best advantage. Are we going to get there perfectly? No. Shift workers are not going to get there perfectly, but let's mitigate where we can. The first thing is when you're on shift, stay regular. All the things that we just talked about, those insomnia kinds of things, they're not just for daytime workers. They're for mid-shift workers too. They're for anybody. Yes, the light that you're going to get, going back to what you mentioned earlier, it's artificial. Is it as effective? Probably not, but it's better than nothing. And you may have to add some of those other things that make your body hot like exercise. Then that mid to day, that's the hardest. And so your last 2 days of mids, you'll want to start doing that too. So if you come home at 7, you eat, and you get to bed by 8, I'm just throwing out numbers, you know your schedule. Instead of 8, push it to 9. You're going to sleep a little bit longer that next day. You have less time between waking up and when you have to go to work, I get it. The next day, push it to 10, sleep in an hour later. On your off days, you keep pushing back to try to get yourself to that day shift. So you're gradually moving over. It's not perfect, but if you can do it, that's the easiest way to transition yourself and get back to a performance peak while you're on shift as fast as you can. Now you all shift you rotate kind of fast, and I told Sergeant Burgos in between, I didn't realize that you were rotating like that, so I have to go back and think, like, what's the best for the long term? 2 Swiss, we put them on 40 days in a row so they can regulate their circadian rhythm. Our Intel folks up north, they do 2 days on, 24 hours, 2 mids, and then 4 days off. Way too fast. I tell them just stay on a day shift. Power through your mids, but stay on a day circadian rhythm for health reasons. So it just kind of depends, and I haven't thought through your schedule because I wasn't prepared for it. I have to think through how the nadir would go. But if you're rotating, that's how you can utilize that natural process. Yes?
Ma'am, on that 40-day schedule, are you talking 5 days on, 2 days off, like a normal?
So do they do 4 and 2s or 4 and 3s? I can't remember. It's 4 days on. I don't like to go more than 3 days off because of circadian drift. Even though we tell people not to, people are people, and so they start doing that. So I think they're on 4 and 2s.
But that would be consistent mids or consistent swings?
Mids for 40 days, yes. So it's tough. And so that's where we start talking about with that. Light discipline's important. But sleep blocking, sometimes, I almost hate to say this because I don't know that it's as relevant for you, but I'll just put it out there for informational purposes. So a mid-shifter is usually where it's at. Days and swings, they have a life with their family, and their off days, they don't feel so distressed. But if you're on a mid-shift and then you have to go back to a mid-shift after your off times, sometimes it helps to do what's called sleep blocking, where you keep a prime sleep block. In this example, this person works from 10 to 6. They come home, they eat something, they fiddle around, and they go to bed at 8, and they sleep until 4. That's their normal mid-shift. But on their off days, they want a life with their family during the day. And so you keep a same block, 8 to 12, 4 hours, and you break it up, get up and have a life with your family, go to sleep, you're going to be tired for another block, but then the discipline happens. You have to set an alarm, you have to wake up if you're awake during your mid-shift hours, even on your off days. You're splitting your cycle. Is this a long-term thing? No. It's not good for you in the long term, but if you're shifting in that way, it can be helpful. Again, probably not the most relevant to you. I apologize because I didn't think to ask ahead of time what your shift would look like. But that's something that should you move to a new place or your shifts change or something like that, this is information that can help you for your off days to not have so much trouble going back to your mids after off days. Any questions on anything we covered?
This might be slightly off topic, but I was wondering if there's any science behind listening to music with, I forget if it's alpha waves or beta waves. It's music that's specifically made for sleeping. Does that actually work in any way?
That dreaming is where the emotional processing is happening, where if there's anything that's affecting our emotions, and we have them, we need them. Emotions are good. But if there's something that we weren't attending to during the day because we're busy, the brain tries to process it symbolically at night, we think. We don't have good science behind it. We do have some science behind nightmares specifically as a way of processing things that then becomes an overlearned neural circuit. So it becomes a habit, like you have a bad dream, maybe it was to process. After a while, you've just been thinking about it so much that it just happens automatically. And we can do some things about that, but I don't know that that's specifically your question.
So it's really not an indicator of good sleep, because that was my impression.
REM sleep, having dreams is an indicator of sufficiency. So if you are waking out of the REM cycle, you're probably in that second half, you've gotten all your stage 4, and now you're in that second half where you're getting all your REM needs met. Let me go back to that. But it's telling us that if you are dreaming, you likely, there we go. You've likely got enough where you're spending most of your time here. So it is good, it's good that you're having it. The only thing is sometimes if you're still tired during the day, there might be something else going on. And for what I mean by that is sometimes when I'm treating folks with PTSD, for example, they drink alcohol so they can pass out because they want to sleep. But heats the enemy of sleep, they're warmed up, they're staying in shallow stages, they're having more dreams because they're not getting to their stage 4. So they're unconscious, they're dreaming, but during the day they're always trying to fall back to sleep. That's one of those differential processes. I would have to find out more. Yes?
For people who don't dream, I guess, does that mean they're not spending a lot of time in that second?
That's what I would suspect first. So dreaming is not burned to memory unless you rehearse it when you wake up. And so sometimes people wake up and they're like, yeah, I was dreaming, I don't remember what, I don't remember my dreams. But if you don't think you were dreaming at all, I'm thinking you were probably truncated in here somewhere.
Sure. I know you were talking about Ambien and other sleep aids being sedatives, not
Yes.
really helpful. What about some of the supplements like melatonin and some of these other things? I know there's a lot of quackery there, a lot of snake oil.
Yes.
But is there any of that that's actually effective?
So with melatonin, it'll work and it'll help if you take it and you're in the dark, because it's what a dark hormone. That's when it comes out, or when your body starts to produce it. Now, I don't think there's any studies on long-term use of melatonin, whether your body gets used to you taking melatonin, so it produces less. I'm not sure if there's any studies about that. So short-term, yes, it's been known to work and help you out. What was the other question? I think there was a
No. I've got another one. I just haven't gotten there yet.
Oh, okay.
You bring up a good point. So before I let you get to your question, we did talk about Ambien and Trazodone and that sort of thing. When I'm working in an insomnia clinic, I've usually seen folks who've been on Ambien for years. And I hate Ambien for lots of reasons, but with Nesta, all of them, they've been studied for 6 months only. But I've seen people on it for years and they become tolerant to it. So initially, you take Ambien, you sedate, you sleep, you're like, hey, this is good, I'm going to take it. But over time, your body becomes tolerant to it. And so you need a bigger dose. And then you're tolerant to that, so then you get the extended release. And then you're tolerant to that, but here's the rub. If you don't take it, when you are tolerant to it, The withdrawal effect is a rebound. So what that means is not only are you not sleeping, but you're really sleeping badly. It's very, very poor. And so usually that tells people, well, geez, I don't sleep with it, but without it, it's even worse, so I'm going to stay on it. And that cycle just perpetuates. So I usually ask people, if I'm working with a sleep doc, I usually ask the sleep doc, please wean them down. I never tell them to do it because I'm not a prescriber. But I tell them, please try to wean them down and let me bring this in. American Academy of Sleep Medicine has put out guidance to the medical community that we should not be putting people on Ambien or Lunesta or anything beyond 7 days. If we do that, we should be sending them to me first. This is the gold standard because it's usually dysregulating the circadian rhythms and just keeping the process going. So I want to put that out there.
Okay. The other question, completely different topic. Obstructive sleep apnea. Just anecdotally, my experience here locally, there seems to be a lot, and I'm wondering if there's a correlation to altitude.
Altitude, that's interesting. I will have to find out more
I know,
about
I don't
that.
sleep with it in here. Go back to Florida? Yeah, I'm there.
Yeah.
But what is that? Is that altitude? Is it the air is too dry and I'm just constantly irritated or whatever? I'm just like,
So
yeah, or
I
you just don't like it here?
I'm thinking off the
Florida's too
cuff.
humid.
I'll have to go back and find the science. Off the cuff, so altitude means that there's lower oxygen density per volume of air. So whatever you're taking in, you're just getting in less. And so if you have apnea, I can imagine it would be worse because your airway is closing, your heart rate is speeding up because it's suffocating, so you wake up more. So if you're taking in less anyway and then your airway is collapsing, probably what would normally be a mild sleep apnea at sea level probably looks a lot worse here. So that makes sense to me. I'm just thinking off the cuff. I don't have the actual science for that specific issue, but I believe that would be right.
Okay. I'm sorry, can I have one more? I'm sorry.
There's
How about sleep position? Back, side, stomach. Is there one blanket statement you make about what's best or whatever's comfortable?
Not really. Sleeping on your stomach tends to be bad for your jaw. We tend to have more temporomandibular joint dysfunction for folks who sleep on their stomach. So that's one thing. Sleeping on your side, if your airway tends to collapse as your muscle tone drops, it doesn't close off the airway, whereas laying supine, it does. It falls into itself. So sleeping on your side, if you have any kind of breathing problems, tends to be a little bit better. But we toss and turn through the night. So you're going to end up how you end up, and it ends up being what's comfortable. But from a positional standpoint, if there's any airway issue, it's on the side.
I'll stop that.
Ma'am, you mentioned some people need 6 hours, some people need 8, some people need 8. How do you tell how much you need?
That's a great question. You allow yourself to free sleep. So usually it comes by regulating your wake time. I know I've said that a million times. So you keep your wake time the same, and then you let yourself go to bed whenever you're tired. Now again, that's tricky because you'll want to cut out any blue light, you'll want to cut out anything that warms up your body before bed. So you'll want to give yourself 2 or 3 hours of being basically sedentary in the dark and see when you fall asleep. So it's kind of hard to do. You can do it that way, or you can do it the way we talked about, where you keep the wake time the same and you slowly back up. You intentionally compress and slowly back yourself up. You could do it either way. But it's hard to say because everybody's different and all kinds of things affect it. Yes.
What about people who seem to have an unhealthy addiction to coffee in the morning? In regards to waking up, is that more of a discipline issue, or is it just they're not getting enough sleep?
So, whereas I'm like, oh, I hate Ambien, I actually really like caffeine, particularly in coffee, because it tends to not have quite as many. Now, of course, we add all kinds of calories to it, but compared to like a Ripit or those kinds of things, you don't get the sugar spike and glucose drop that's associated with those. So a couple of cups of coffee in a day are pretty good. And then when that person in the big group said, hey, what do I do if I get called in the middle of the night? And I'm thinking a little bit of caffeine is probably good. Now, if it's a whole lot of it, coffee tastes good. And so that's then moving out of, you're probably not drinking it for the caffeine, you're drinking it for the taste, you're drinking it because you're bored and you're doing something. It's probably something else at that point.
The reason I ask is because a lot of people have some type of caffeine supplement in the morning, but if you don't need it, does that mean that you've received the sleep that you needed? If you're not feeling tired, does that mean you just, I would say you might just need less? Like, so you only got 4 hours, but you're not drinking coffee in the morning.
And you're feeling okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, you might just be a short sleeper, a rapid cycler.
That's not to say, because the inertia for waking up, some people are going to be tired when they wake up, but they just have to start their day, and then it's throughout the day. If you're not falling asleep when you shouldn't be, all right, if you're falling asleep when you shouldn't be, that's an indication that you're not getting enough sleep.
Sure.
Yeah, that was that's part of what I think, remember in the big slide I showed that like Buckley, their sugary drinks went down, that sort of thing. I think part of it is they're not so tired anymore, but a lot of times we just develop a habit. I'm on crew, I'm bored, something to do, I'll just start drinking. I need this. So I don't know if some of that went into it too. I don't know. Other questions? Yes?
So with the sleep cycle, napping, you said try to keep it within 30 minutes. Does that mean you just do a quick stage 1 or stage 2?
It usually takes you right around in here.
And that's enough?
That's enough to get, so a lot of restoration comes here in 2. This is the deep stuff, of course, that's the best, but you get some pretty good stuff out of stage 2, but you're not, if you try to wake up out of here, it's like, you get a call in the middle of the night and you're like, oh, like I can't wake up, what's going on? That's likely coming out of here. This keeps you shallow enough where you can wake up without that inertia.
What are your thoughts on self-hypnosis?
Are you talking like relaxation? Mm-hmm. Good stuff. Yeah. So lots of people during the day, they're doing all kinds of things. They're staying busy. They're not allowing themselves time to think, and so they get in bed, and all the things they weren't thinking about start coming up. And so it's what I call the zygarnik effect. If you get a song stuck in your head and you sing it all the way through, it goes away. Kind of the same thing. If you've got something running around in your head, write it down. That's the zygarnik effect. You complete it, your brain tends to have an easier time stopping. And then slowing down your heart rate by slowing down your breathing rate tends to relax your body and turn off that, we use medical terms, that sympathetic nervous arousal, but basically that fight or flight response. It turns it down, it reactivates the opposite. Can be helpful. Yes?
This may be an indication of me not getting enough sleep, but I need a very vicious alarm to wake up. So sirens going off, math problems. I need to answer math problems to switch the alarm off. Do you have any recommendations for the type of alarm to use? Wake up more gently rather than having a heart attack?
The biggest thing I would start looking at is, are you getting sufficient sleep? Are you starting to warm up where it's easier to sleep? Are you waking up out of REM versus deeper stages? So sometimes the same, but I would wonder if you could start going to bed a little bit earlier and fall asleep. If you can do that, probably will start waking earlier as well. But sometimes people also find those light alarms are helpful too. That's a lot of money to spend. The gadgetry, someone said snake oilery. Maybe. There's some people that it works for. It's not a bad thing, it doesn't hurt. But I'd be looking at sufficient sleep first. If you're getting sufficient sleep and you're still tired, I'd start looking at other things that I'd want to start asking questions.
Thank you.
So if you wake up like 2 hours before your alarm goes off, I know everybody does that. Do you just get up? Is it better, or do you try to get your extra 2 hours of sleep?
If you get up, then the caveat is that, thank you. Sorry, that helps me to not get distracted.
Yeah.
So if you're waking up 2 hours before bedtime and you're sleeping 2 hours earlier, you start shifting your schedule around. So if you wake up 2 hours before bedtime, try still to do that sleep compression and not fall asleep early. You're going to be really tired, but try to push yourself a little bit. So it's a little bit opposite of what I'm saying, but try and keep your wake time the same. Right, so you're waking, say your alarm's set for 6 and you wake up at 4. What's likely gonna happen based on your process S is if you normally go to bed at 10, you're tired at 8. I don't want you to go sleep at 8, I want you to sleep till 6. And I don't want your body to realign. So I'm gonna have you stay up till 10 anyway. So you can do it that way, but stay up. It's unlike a pilot.
So is yawning actually connected to like how much sleep you get, or is that just? Because I feel like I yawn a lot, but I'm not even like sometimes I'm not tired. I just do it naturally.
It's more connected to your blood pressure level. One more question?
Yeah, so, which one?
I mean, not one more.
Oh, okay. So,
Only one.
So going back to the napping sleep cycle thing, so when you say you can only nap for 30 minutes, does that include the time that it takes to fall asleep, or, okay?
That's, yeah. So 30 minutes will get you here. But some people say it'll take me 10 minutes, and so I want to balance myself a 40-minute window. Okay, but try not to go beyond that, because what tends to happen is if you fall asleep fast and you start getting deeper, it's harder to get out.
You have another question?
Yes, so going back to melatonin, let's say 2 hours before I go to bed, I turn off all my lights, but I have a light source, like a low light source from an alarm clock, or if I turn my computer on or something, will that hinder the melatonin creation process, or will it just create less, or how would that work?
It counter-affects it, so the melatonin that you take as a supplement sort of dovetails what your brain naturally pushes out, and so that is what makes the effect work. If you've got your supplement, but a blue light source like a computer, they counter-effect, or too bright a light source, they counter-effect. Better to have a little lamp with just a normal light bulb and do something like that as opposed to the computer because of the wavelength of the light. Any other questions? All right, so it's about that time. Again, please fill out your surveys. They came around. We'll collect them. You can pass them to the sides and just leave them there. We'll collect them. Really want to thank you for all your attention, all your questions. They're great. I'm going to hang around. Sergeant Burgess and I are going to hang around. If there are some questions you wanted to ask us offline, we're going to stick around.